a scenario that...
I remember challenging the 5 precepts in Dharma class. And I said sometimes they can be very treacherous, and everybody was upset with me. They said, show an example. I said, okay, what about the one against lying or false witnessing? And I showed them a real life example that happened in my parents' time during World War II, where there was a neighbor who knew of another neighbor who was hiding Jews. And the Nazis came up to this person and said, do you know of anybody hiding Jews, and where are they? And the person looked them straight in the face. He knew where the Jews were, but he looked at the Nazi and said, no, I don't know anything. Well, there you are, you just broke a precept, you lied.
Yeah.
But
And that's the thing, I don't believe in like sort of rigid sort of...
but in this case it was a good, quote unquote, a good thing to do.
It depends on the circumstances. Well, I mean, to each their own. I'm speaking from a thelemic point of view again, so that has to be taken into consideration. So, but I'm going to continue here. So we have we were talking about the machine of the mind, and we pretty much covered some of the stuff I was going to talk about there. I'm going to continue and finish off with what Ananda Matea had been saying. This is what we have to do with this mechanism of our minds, each one for himself. First, earnestly to investigate our component sankharas, or tendencies, to see wherein we are lacking, to see wherein our mental energy is well used and where it runs to waste. And then to keep adjusting, little by little, all these working parts of our mind engine, till each is brought to work in the way that is desired, till the whole vast complex machinery of our being is all working to one end. And that's one of the handy things about meditation. Even if you're not sure what your goals are or where you want to go, just getting in the habit of a daily routine of meditation is going to be huge, because it quiets and stills the mind so you can gain some degree of objectivity at the very least. I don't have television anymore, and I'm very glad of that, because one of the problems I didn't have it for a long time, and then I discovered I had it again. I got addicted to watching it again. And it drove me nuts, because I got addicted to a couple of shows that were on that weren't even necessarily hugely good, but it was just something that I wanted to watch while I was eating or something. And all the commercials that are on there, it's all this noise and chatter that's floating around your head. So when I got rid of it again, it was like, a relief. Because it gets addictive and it ends up with all this chatter. So just that, doing the meditation, doing any basic meditation for that purpose, just to clear your mind in order to gain some degree of objectivity, is like in itself worthwhile. And then from there you can start to gain a better idea of where it is you want to go and what your goals are.
Can I ask you a strange question? Did you get withdrawal symptoms when you stopped using the TV?
Yeah, I think you can notice withdrawal symptoms from pretty much anything in life, because anything can theoretically be addictive in terms of becoming habit forming. That again falls into the subject of these tendencies. They are habits. For instance, drinking coffee. When I was buying coffee from Tim Hortons all the time, I gave it up since, but when I had been, I noticed that I would go on the way to work, I'd be walking to work, and I would, without fail, go over to, on the path to go get coffee. And then there would be a few days, occasionally, when I would wake up in the morning and like extra early, and I'd go get a coffee and then come back home and be practicing guitar, doing whatever. And then I would head to work, and I would just naturally go to get a coffee again without even realizing it. So the instincts end up being set in place. And that's a big part of the addiction and the habit forming of it. When I was smoking cigarettes, it was always the habit. It was just automatic. Certain times, go outside of a building, automatically go to pick out a cigarette. You wouldn't even really have to have the thought of it. It would just be automatic. So a lot of these things are automatic tendencies that he's talking about, that I believe, that you can essentially become aware of and see how they work and how you best deal with them. I find that when I try to quit something, like when I was trying to quit smoking or when I'm trying to quit X thing, it's really hard when I just try to go cold turkey, because it's the full force, and it's like the equal and opposite reaction kind of thing. It'll just it'll, as much as I want to be strong against it, it's like I automatically go and I would automatically go and buy a pack of cigarettes or whatever, and it would feel like something takes control of me. And I'm a naturally addicted personality, so I have to be careful of that. But so what I did was, rather than just trying to do what you assume are the right ways, I experimented and tried to pay attention for what works for me and what doesn't. And one of the things that I found helped was, being sick. If I had the flu or something like that, I couldn't smoke if I wanted to, so I would try to springboard off of that. When I did quit smoking, it was because I had a really bad hangover and I couldn't smoke for a couple of days. So I just springboard off that. A lot of the time I find it's sort of like being a surfer, sort of waiting for the right wave to carry you in. So if you just go in at random times, it's not really going to do you any good. You're just going to get pulled back in with the tide. So when it comes to dealing with those kinds of tendencies and habits, I find it's really handy to think in those terms. See what works for you. Again, the diary, this is all relevant to the diary because you keep track of what works for you and what does not, or what can be contributing factors and whatnot. So,
One thing that was terrifying for me about addiction and that kind of thing, about like instinct and how it's so instinctual. Like my friend, before I even smoked cigarettes, I smoke cigarettes, but I don't generally buy packs. Like I probably smoke 1 or 2 a day, but I used to buy packs and freaking like like he said to me like 3 or 4 years ago that it's like, and it's like having to go to the bathroom. You just get up and you have to go.
Yeah.
And you don't like. There's this thing, and it's like bing, bing, bing. You have to go pee.
Exactly.
It's like, bing, bing, bing. You need a cigarette. Bing,
And
bing,
this
bing, you need
this
a beer,
speaks to the
or
fact that
whatever
like
it
the
is.
intellect is not the only sole aspect of consciousness. There's all these other aspects of consciousness, and if you allow them to, they will take you over and they will guide you wherever they want to guide you. This is actually Liber Jugorum, Crowley wrote, which is the Book of the Yoke. It's basically a whole set of exercises for working with these types of instinctual level consciousness things, not in a moral sense, not like trying to cause them to not happen, but it's basically and it's a little bit it's a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people when they're first hearing about it. But the idea is to choose a thought or a word, or the easiest one to think of as a word. It could be an action or whatever, but like a word such as the word "I," and you could swear basically not to say the word "I" for like the next week, for instance. And every time you say the word "I," you take a razor blade and score yourself on the arm. You can do a less scary sort of thing if you want to. You can use an elastic band and snap yourself nice and hard, but it has to hurt. You can take a pin and jab yourself. It has to hurt. It has to sort of be a sharp in the now kind of thing.
You start associating the word "I" with pain. It's like, I'm going to go for a walk.
But this is why you can't moralize it. You can't say, I'm going to try and use this to quit smoking, because it had occurred to me at one point to try and do it to quit smoking. But it's not a good thing to do in that sense. It's to get yourself more familiar with the way that these instinctual things, these instinctive levels of consciousness work. And it can train them, and it also just makes you more aware of them. So, and whatever other benefits you can get from it, I encourage you to actually go through and do the work with it and see what it actually does for you, and take note of it.
I tried the Liber Jugorum on ego, right? Because I used to say "I know" all the time.
Yeah.
I was telling people, "Oh, I know." Every time I say "I know," whack with a rubber band on my arm.
Yeah.
So now I say "I believe."
That's actually just on a completely linguistic thing. I try not to say this is how it is, or it is this, and I try to make it clear that I'm like speaking from my point of view a lot of the time, because of the fact that it's like it's so easy to fall into that paradigm of like this is the way it is and not even realize it. So it's
That's my opinion.
yeah.
I believe it was a good exercise.
There
Yeah.
you go.
In book 4, I'm doing a bad job of it now, but like Crowley was like try for a week just to not cross your legs. I'm terrible at that. Like I'll sit and cross my legs. I could do it right now. Like he just said, it was such a good exercise for me. I found like just like really meditative thing. Like it's like so unintentional. You're just like bam.
Yeah.
Like, and then it's like, fuck, what am I doing? I just like.
Well, it's interesting
because
because
it's not me.
Ananda Bhattacharya, in this same work, Training of the Mind, he's talking about the fact that he actually uses the example of how babies learn to start speaking their first words and that sort of thing. And he uses a description which I won't be able to get perfectly. I'll just be paraphrasing roughly, but it's basically like